Welcome to kavsworldtravels. If you could hit that subscribe button and help support the channel, that would be very much appreciated. Give the video a like and hit that bell button for notifications. Hope you enjoy the video.
We're talking a pair of acoustic guitars on the floor, given to by fans from different parts of the world. If you look to the, you also can see a hat that we used to wear on the left in the glass by the wall. In Jamaica we call that a tam, T-A-M, a hat that people love to put their long skin. That was one of Bob's favorite tams. And if you look to the right beside me, you can see a cushion on the ground that Bob used to sit and meditate on, as well as a bedside table with 3 original Bibles that Bob used to read. So you can see 3 Bibles at the back, 3 different versions of the Bible.
When we prepare it, it almost looks like scrambled eggs. It's right next door, and if you want to leave a tip with me, tips are appreciated. But thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Pick up yourself. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
That's the mic out.
Tells you what she said about the peace concept.
You do it with yours as a
Yes. Perfect.
Anything for you guys?
They're before me.
what you got?
What you looking for?
George Steebell. He was the very first black millionaire. And that's his house right on the corner here. Can you glimpse? While some of them in the smaller communities, you just pay a specific fare. Different persons can get on board the taxi, and each person just pay a specific amount of fare. In many ways, in many things, in education, they've got Prime Ministers of Jamaica. Sir William Alexander Bustamante was the first Prime Minister after things that they did for Jamaica. So come along this way, please. Flowers, bougainvillea, comes in 7 different colors. Flower of Grenada. Hotel. Dried and they use it as their home. They drink from it as well. Rastas are known to be naturalists. Anything that's natural that they can use, they will. So, these 2 bronze statues, they were built by Laura Facey. The park was opened in 2001. national arena. Track and fields, where Usain Bolt talent was also discovered. We have an annual high school contest. It's done here. Kids look forward to it every year. Boys and girl champs, we call it. So it's done at the National Arena across there on the right. And the National Stadium is right next to it. The arena can take 35,000 persons. On the right, that's the statue of Bob Marley. Cricket, also familiar with. Some you might not. Yeah, man. So the painter. And also Caribbean Games. But 1966, CARICOM Games were held here. So this is a must-go for every Jamaican if we are interested in sports. Shaggy, that old that one there with the crown shape. But Usain Bolt, he has a house there as well. Asafa Powell has a house, you know, famous folk. Yeah, they have to let their name be called, so they purchased a house there too. Yeah, man. So all kind of famous folks. A lot of folks you see across there with some envelopes or making a line there. They are given specific times to come in and do an interview with one of the U.S. consulates. And they pay a fee of $300 US. We have a taxi terminus here. Sometimes gets a little crowded, a little busy. Bungee jumping now. Yeah, and a little piece of the island you see sticking out, that peninsula there. That's what's left of Port Royal. That was where the Buccaneers, the pirates, once lived, and it went underground when that earthquake struck, 1692. So part of Port Royal is still slanted into the sea. And when we do tours there, you have to walk slant in one of the houses there because half of it is under the sand. So that was where it is rich in history. Many of them. Yeah, man. Haile Selassie, late Emperor of Ethiopia.
Do it first, we clear the land, very clean. And line out 5 feet apart, down, 8 feet across. And we dig a hole about a foot by a foot. And put 3 pounds of chicken manure in. And 3 pounds of chicken manure.
Manure.
Yeah, chicken manure. Throw it in a little dirt. Yeah. And 4 pounds of fertilizer. Throw it in the dirt. Mount up very high. And put a stick in. And then when you a stick.
So it's a steak
A stick.
on the chicken.
Okay. And so when the rain fall,
Yeah.
we get our plant from the nursery. When it reach about 8 months, it's about 9 inches. And then we place it in the hole and we nurture it like a baby. Give enough water, enough food in order to survive. But you know, officially our plantation begins from up the top there. It is a mature plantation. It is a 40-acre plot, 20 hectares. It was established by the American named Whitney Kemper in the year 1979. Unfortunately, he used to migrate back to the United States within 2 years. So the Japanese saw the opportunity and they bought it in 1981. And from 1981 to this present moment, it is owned by a Japanese-based company, UCC Yoshimo Coffee Company.
Is that why the coffee is so expensive? You
Not-
didn't buy it up.
Not in Jamaica, in Japan. Okay. And what these men specializes in is the Arabica species of coffee. Why? The Arabica species of coffee is a more productive plant. And when you have a plantation that is producing a lot, you know what I mean? Okay, so all of this coffee that we are looking at, they are the Arabica species. You see the lifespan of these coffee, they are 25 to 30 years. When they reach that stage, the production decreases. So what we do, we take it from the root right here at about 18 inches. And then what they do, they spring from the sides up. Within 3.5 years, they start to produce again. We also tap it at the top at about 5 feet 9 inches, about 175 centimeter. So the ladies are enabled to reap the beans, because if you allow it to grow, it can grow up to 20 feet and stop. And no lady is so tall. Okay. Also, on any given plantation within this region, we have to have shades, because if a plant exposed to too much sunlight or too much rain, it can pose a problem. That's why we have the banana tree throughout the farm, which is a fast growing shade tree. We have the guango here, one of the best shade tree we ever have on any plantation, with the seed up the top and the inga. But from my observation, the guango is the best. Why? In the winter it sheds its leaf. In the spring it takes home back its leaf. It also provides water for the plant through mulching. You see, we rely heavily on the rainfall, so we don't have any drip irrigation in place. That's why this is a very important tree to have on any plantation, especially in this region. I also tell my visitors oftentimes that you see, whenever one is entering into a business, sometimes you gain, sometimes you lose. No one wants to be a loser, but it happens at times. We have some little insect on the plantation they call berry borer. These little insects only fly 20 feet and stop, because they are easy to tire, but they are very, very destructive. What they do, they are more active in the summer. What they do, they penetrate the bottom of the beans, and they go inside the beans and they lay their eggs. Sometimes when the men go through, open the beans, look inside, they see 70 to 100 larvae. If you don't control those immediately as they discover, they can wipe out the entire crop. Our crop was destroyed by those insects in 2013. We lost about 80% of our coffee. So we have to take them off the tree very fast, burn them to prepare for the next crop. And what the men do, they try some experiment, and it works. They get some 12 full ounce plastic bottle, take out both sides, put water in the bottom, and a little thing called ethanol in the middle. The ethanol is an attraction, and what it does, it draws the insect to it, and they go into a bottle and they drown. Very, very effective. Because what they're trying to do also is trying to eliminate the use of dangerous chemical, which is not good for human health. Not to say that we don't use a little chemical here, there, and everywhere, no, but they're trying to phase it out. Okay, yeah, they're trying to also to protect the environment. Okay, because you see, being under the Rainforest Alliance, where we are being certified, we have to be careful of the chemical we use, especially on this plantation. We have to stick to what they recommend. You see, coffee is good at an altitude of 5,550 feet above sea level. That's near 1,800 meters. Here where we are is 3,001 foot above sea level. That's 896 meters. And why this coffee is so rich in aroma, has its unique taste and this nice flavor. Take for instance, in the morning we have this heavy dew on the plant. By 11 o'clock, it dried up. By 3 o'clock sometime, we have this massive cloud cover. By 5:30, bright sunshine again. This is where nature come and play for coffee. That's why what Japanese does, they come into the island with their expert, and the taste of this coffee is so good. And these men specializes in quality. That's why 70% of this entire region of coffee goes to Japan, 20% to the rest of the world, 10% remain back in the country for human consumption. That's why where you are, you may not see the Blue Mountain coffee any at all. And if you see it, I must tell you, it is pretty expensive on the foreign market. Okay.
Ensure that you will be getting 100% Jamaica Blue Mountain coffee, right? In wildlife, especially in the Blue Mountains, are over 200 species of birds. Then again, we have the mongoose. As mongoose were brought in to get rid of the snakes, so there are no poisonous snakes on the actual island. And I've personally never seen a snake here in the Blue Mountains. But if you go deeper in the mountains, you can find deer. But the only reason why we have deer is because during a hurricane, they escaped from the zoo and headed to the actual mountains. And so from ever since, we've had deer, right? But other than that, I said we don't have much wildlife in the actual Blue Mountains, right? You have seen the plants, right? You have basically seen how they are grown
but what you may not have seen before are truly all the beans that are produced in the world of coffee, right? And throughout the world, there are in fact 72 different beans, all coming from two main species. You have what is the Coffea arabica and also the Coffea robusta species, right? So naturally, each of these beans are only produced within a specific region of the world, the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, which is 23.5 degrees north and south of the equator. So once any country lies in that particular region, it can naturally produce coffee, right? According to the International Coffee Organization based in London, the bulk of the world's coffee produced is Robusta, but 80% of what we consume is marketed as being Arabica. You go to any supermarket or coffee shop, especially outside of Europe, and you pick up a package of coffee, it always tells you you're getting Arabica coffee, right? But in fact, it can be 20% Arabica, 80% Robusta, and labeled as being Arabica coffee. The fact is, there are no laws that says you cannot state that a package of coffee is Arabica when you know it is a blend of both Robusta and Arabica. So lots of large companies, what they'll do, purchase the cheapest Robustas, passed off to their consumers as truly being Arabica coffee. In a region more specifically known as Kaffa, hence where coffee actually got its name. The fruits of the coffee plant known as the coffee cherries, and note these fruits should be red, but they've been in water for about 5 days, so they've started to ferment. So ultimately, as I said, the fruits were basically eaten as ordinary fruits because they are quite sweet. They were said to be domesticated between the 5th and 9th century, and legends have it that it was discovered by an Ethiopian goat herder by the name of Kaldi. Kaldi said to have discovered coffee when in search of his goats. He found them eating red cherries, but he noticed that the goats became spirited and didn't want to sleep at night, right? So of course, Kaldi was fascinated by that, so he tried the fruits for himself, realized that he too could not sleep at night, so he took his fascination of the fruits to a monk, but the monk, upon seeing how they reacted after the consumption of those fruits, disapproved of the use and ordered that those cherries be disposed of in the monastery's fire. But when he smelled that enticing aroma coming from the fire, that is when the monk quickly returned to the scene, pulled the beans out, grounded them up, dissolved them in a little hot water, and voila, the first hot cup of coffee was actually made, right? But were not only the first to cultivate coffee, but the Arabs were also the first to begin the trade of these, right? What we now classify as being green or ultimately unroasted coffee beans. So by the 15th century, green coffee beans were being produced in Yemen. From Yemen, coffee would have spread throughout the rest of the Middle East, went to Northern Africa, Persia, Turkey, Italy, the Balkans by the 1600s to Malabar in India, from India to the Indonesian island of Java, from Java to Amsterdam, from Amsterdam to France, from France through to Martinique, and from Martinique, that is when coffee finally made it to the promised land, Jamaica, right? So Jamaica, in fact, received coffee back in 1728 when Sir Nicholas Laws took only 6 plants, right? Only a mere 6 plants were taken from Martinique when they were first planted on the Temple Hall estate, and that in truth created the base of our coffee industry today. And in this property today, there are approximately 40,000 coffee plants, right? And every single one of these plants are basically individually hand harvested, right? So our first export of coffee from the island of Jamaica was in the year 1737, 9 years later, right? In fact, we exported 83,000 pounds of the green or unroasted coffee beans. By 1814, Jamaica became the world's largest coffee producing country, right? The fact is, we exported in excess of 34 million pounds of coffee. But since then, Jamaica exports less than 7.5 million pounds, and 70% of what we do produce today is exported to the Japanese. Another 15% goes throughout the rest of the world, and 15% will stay on the island for local consumption. Because I said, most Jamaicans will tell you that they're not coffee drinkers, but they are tea drinkers, right? But the entire island can literally produce coffee, but the highlighted regions are the major coffee producing areas, right? So, on the island of Jamaica, we only produce the Arabica coffee, and that is because we cannot compete with the larger producers like Brazil or Vietnam based on quantity, so we try to compete based on producing the higher quality of coffee, right? So the Arabica coffee is priced as a higher quality of coffee because depending on where you grow the Arabica beans, the quality and the taste of it changes. But if you grow Robusta coffee, no matter where you grow it, it tastes the same. It's extremely bitter, quite sour, highly acidic, and does contain at least 3 times more caffeine than the Arabica. And as the name suggests, robust literally is a harder plant, it's easy to mass produce, and I said at least 5 times more than the Arabica is actually produced from the Robusta plants, right? If you're saying to yourself, well, you've never drinking Robusta coffee before, and you've actually drinking instant coffee, then you're 99.9% certain of actually having Robusta beans, right? Because majority of the world's instant coffees are usually made from Robusta beans because it's much cheaper, right? But ultimately, the entire island of Jamaica can produce coffee, but once we get into these particular areas, what are the highlighted regions, these areas are truly the major coffee producing areas. Under 2,000 feet, right, or under 600 meters outside of this region, what is the Blue Mountains of Jamaica, the Arabica coffee we produce on the island is classified as being the Jamaica Prime Wash. If we take that same Arabica plant above 2,000 feet or above 600 meters, it's ultimately to the center of the island, still outside of the Blue Mountains, it is now classified as being the Jamaica High Mountain Supreme, right? And Blue Mountain coffee is ultimately the champagne of coffees. So it's only within the Champagne region of France that champagne can be produced. So the fact is, it is only within here, what is the Blue Mountains of Jamaica, that these 2 beans can be produced, what are the Jamaica Blue Mountain coffee, which are the Blue Mountain Peaberry and the Blue Mountain #1 coffee bean, right? So in fact, if is so supreme amongst all others is that the Blue Mountain range is a microclimate range, right? It never gets too hot, too wet, too cold, nor too dry, all year round. All year round is pretty balanced, equal amounts of sunlight, humidity, rainfall. The altitude and location is a factor. The temperature is 7 degrees Celsius cooler than anywhere else on the island. We even dare to tell you that it does get rather cold in the Blue Mountains, right? So it may not get as cold as the UK, but a very cold day here gets to a low of 12 degrees Celsius. But the truth is, anything at all below 20 degrees Celsius in Jamaica is actually classified as being absolutely cold, right? So they normally tell you, once you head to the Blue Mountains, to walk with a sweater, right? The day-to-day weather, quite predictable. Hottest part of the day is usually the morning, so it's between sunrise to about 11:30 a.m. That is when we receive the most sunlight. As it approaches midday, the clouds and the mist covers the mountains. Afternoons are usually overcast with the chance of rain. And at about 3:34, we get a bit more sunlight up until sunset, but after 6 p.m., then comes the dreadful temperatures of about 18 degrees Celsius. So the temperature usually drops below 20 degrees Celsius after 6 p.m. So the average temperatures at night in the Blue Mountains is roughly 18 degrees Celsius, and everybody here sleeps under a blanket in the fear of freezing. Right? Listen, it never gets that too hot, too wet, too cold, or too dry. So we do receive like a regular cloud cover, there is a mist cover, and you can feel this gentle trade wind. It neutralizes the morning heat, and technically what it does is to slow the maturity cycle of the Arabica cherries. In fact, your average Arabica cherry anywhere outside of the Blue Mountains throughout the rest of the world takes 5 to 8 months to become mature or to actually become red. In the Blue Mountains, it takes no less than 9 to 11 months. So the slower maturity cycle, it now enables our coffee to be naturally alkaline rather than being acidic. And the fact is, it produces no less than 3 to 5 times higher levels of sugar than any other coffee in the world. So ultimately, Blue Mountain coffee is naturally sweet, and the fact is, the cup doesn't really require any milk, sugars, or artificial sweetness, right? When each of these fruits are being processed, what is done is a wash exclusive method. So the fact is, we harvest the ripest fruits, they are separated using a pool of water, and what will happen? Good fruits will sink, bad ones will float. From the good fruits, we extract our coffee beans, and normally, within any cherry at all, there are 2 beans on the actual inside. On a special occasion, there is a single bean inside of this cherry, and that is what we describe as being the pea berry, right? But because each bean is covered in sugar, you prevent them from fermenting by washing. So they're washed, and what we call the wet parchments, these will be placed outdoors on concrete surfaces. They'll dry for a matter of 10 to 12 days. And after 10 to 12 days in the natural sunlight, we take them indoors to a sanitized, a secure environment. They'll rest for at least 2 to 3 months. Right? And after 2 to 3 months of resting, we take all these, what we call the dried parchments, to the dry mills, and there we separate what are the husks from the actual coffee beans. Right? So the husk will be separated from the actual coffee beans, and what we'll end up with at the end of the day is truly described as being the green coffee bean. Right? So green beans. So the green beans are what we now export, right? This particular bean, the green beans are what we export, but before any of these green beans can be exported, it has to be polished and ultimately placed within a grading system such as this, which is known as the British Standard Scales, the only standard measurement of coffee in the world. Whether you're growing coffee in Brazil, Vietnam, or even Colombia, this is ultimately how all the beans are graded. They say are better qualities of coffee. In Jamaica, we take it a step further. We don't only grade them based off sizes, but the fact is, each bean selected must be 96 to 100% perfect in color, shape, size, and texture. Right? So yes, everything does filter through these screens based off their sizes. But the fact is, if it lies within screens 17, 18, and also 19, these are classified as the highest quality beans, which are #1 beans, right? But for them to be classified as the Blue Mountain #1 bean, anything you select from a 17, 18, and 19 screen must be no more than 4% defective. And this is how we identify what a defective coffee bean looks like, right? What you want from the screens are in the top left-hand corner, good bean, and if it has a number from 1 through to 14, all those beans must be removed from each of the screens by hand, right? Workers go through each screen using iron-hand coordination, bean by bean. They'll pick out every single major defective coffee beans, right? So don't worry, because we leave it up to the ladies to do all the sorting, right? So ultimately, I said all the sorting is done by hand, and what you want is here, good beans, and everything else that has a number must be removed from the screens by hand. So because it does affect the actual taste of the actual coffee, right? Not wasted. Right? So it is now sold as a lower quality of Jamaica Blue Mountain, or you can put it in like Blue Mountain blends, and persons can even put it in like instant coffees, right? But ultimately, once all the sorting is completed, that is when you do further tests. So you test the density. If it contains 12.5% moisture, samples are taken, and that is where it's roasted. It's also grounded, brewed, and ultimately analyzed by master coffee tasters at the Coffee Industry Board of Jamaica, and that will now ensure what we put on the market saying it's Blue Mountain coffee is actually Blue Mountain coffee, right? So the big question is, in fact, how can you truly tell that what you had a short while ago was an actual cup of Jamaica Blue Mountain coffee? How do you know that we didn't just serve you instant coffee?
It's the taste.
Absolutely. So the taste of it, it should never be sour because it produces sugar, right? So that bitterness is quite mild. So it's mild to that of dark chocolate. So if you can eat a piece of dark chocolate, then there should be absolutely no reasons why that you can't have this cup without putting additives, no milk, no sugars, no artificial sweetness. It has a unique fragrance and aroma when brewed. The flavors are described as being full-bodied. It's balanced, so the bitterness in Blue Mountain coffee never overpowers the sweetness, nor the sweetness overpower the bitterness. Then again, it never reacts negatively to the cardiac nor the actual nervous system. So you can easily drink 8, 9, or even 10 cups today without feeling jittery, get palpitation of the heart, or complain about stomach burns, right?
That's a good question. I'm a diabetic, and you said it produces sugar. So how does that affect me?
Well, I said the sugars in this is quite minimal, right?
That's all right, that's okay. Just a curious question, because I picked it up because I normally have to have sugar in coffee anyway, but I didn't need sugar in it.
Exactly, because it is a naturally sweet coffee, right? But ultimately, there's more coffee here if anybody would like a second cup, right? But I said, in truth, Blue Mountain coffee does have properties that help to fight against ailments such as colon cancer, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, heart disease, liver disease, gallstones. It produces vitamins, niacin and taurine. It's active antioxidants, enhances mental awareness, but it only contains 20 to 25 milligrams of caffeine in each cup, right?
3565.
Thank you very much for watching this video. Hope you all enjoyed. Remember to hit that subscribe button and help support the channel. Give the video a like and hit that bell button for notifications. I hope you enjoyed the video.